In 2025, the United States finds itself deeply divided along political lines, with tensions between Republican and Democratic states reaching a boiling point. The Republican-controlled states, emboldened by the return of Donald Trump to the presidency in 2024, begin aggressively pushing through a series of controversial policies. These include stricter immigration laws, rollbacks on environmental regulations, and efforts to centralize more power at the federal level, often at the expense of states' rights. Trump's rhetoric, which emphasizes law and order and a return to traditional values, resonates strongly in these states, but it also deepens the rift with Democratic-led states. Democratic states, particularly those on the coasts like California, New York, and Illinois, resist these policies fiercely. They see Trump's agenda as a direct attack on progressive values, including climate action, social justice, and reproductive rights. State governments in these regions pass laws to nullify federal policies, creating a patchwork of conflicting regulations across the country. The federal government responds by withholding funding and resources from these states, further escalating the conflict. As the standoff intensifies, Democratic leaders begin to openly discuss the possibility of secession. The idea gains traction among progressive activists and some state legislators, who argue that the federal government no longer represents their interests. In California, a referendum on independence is narrowly passed, setting off a chain reaction in other blue states. The federal government declares these moves unconstitutional and refuses to recognize them, leading to a constitutional crisis. The situation deteriorates rapidly. Protests and counter-protests erupt across the country, often turning violent. In some areas, local law enforcement and National Guard units loyal to their state governments clash with federal agents. The military, deeply divided in its loyalties, struggles to maintain order. By late 2025, the country is effectively split into two factions: the Federal Union, led by the Trump administration and supported by Republican states, and the Free States Alliance, a coalition of Democratic states seeking greater autonomy or outright independence. The conflict escalates into open warfare in early 2026, with skirmishes breaking out along the borders between red and blue states. Cities like Denver, Atlanta, and Philadelphia become flashpoints, as both sides vie for control of key infrastructure and resources. The war is not as clear-cut as the Civil War of the 1860s. It is a messy, asymmetrical conflict marked by guerrilla tactics, cyberattacks, and widespread civil unrest. Internationally, the U.S. is seen as a fractured superpower, and its global influence wanes. Allies and adversaries alike struggle to navigate the new reality, with some countries offering support to one side or the other. The United Nations attempts to mediate, but its efforts are largely ineffective. By 2027, the war has taken a heavy toll on the American people. Millions are displaced, and the economy is in shambles. Both sides begin to realize that a prolonged conflict is unsustainable, and tentative peace talks begin. The eventual outcome is uncertain, but the once united United States is forever changed, with the possibility of a permanent division into separate nations looming large. This scenario, while fictional, reflects the deep political and cultural divisions that have been growing in the U.S. for years. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of polarization and the fragility of democracy when compromise becomes impossible.